That's actually the picture that because I took note of, started to take note of what were the most helpful pics also that you presented. I think that was one of the most of the best ones that I saw that explains so well how the flow of contracts, agreements, and money is working. That's particularly for newcomers in the partnerships, an important thing to understand. And we will have in the CTP new partners that will join that haven't had any Eranet experience so far. So this kind of material is very helpful, I think.
Michael, there are a couple of questions coming in. Maybe
Yeah, that's great. Let's take them.
Okay, so one was the setup of the expert panel. So very much a bottom-up process where countries would nominate known experts, not only from their countries, but in some cases they come from further afield. And this long list was then down-selected based on what came in the pre-proposal stage, and also accounting for an appropriate balance of, say, the more academically low TRL oriented topics or projects versus those that are a little bit towards higher TRL. So having an appropriate mix of industry and academics was actually quite important in assembling the panels that would evaluate the full proposals. So that goes to the question that I think Lisa posed from Sweden.
Yes. We have another question from Susanne, I saw.
Yeah.
Can you bring that up, Nicholas?
So basically, the co-funded was really strictly along the lines of the ranking list of call one, which was the one co-funded call. And basically the ranking list pretty much predetermined how the co-fund was distributed. The co-fund was distributed quote unquote evenly, i.e. the proportion of co-fund that would go to the project was constant. So we didn't change, for example, allocate more co-fund to one project versus the other one, because that wasn't in our rules. And then basically once we depleted the co-fund, that was it in terms of projects that were being funded. Geri,
Great.
anything
There
to
was
add here?
another. Yeah, sorry, Gary, go ahead. And Nicholas, you can prepare. There was another question about scalability of the monitoring concept. You can bring that one up, maybe. But Gary, sorry, I don't want it to interrupt you.
No, I was just nodding because I agree to what Gunther was saying. If we're thinking about the scalability of the monitoring concept, that's a really good question that we're struggling with. Because the number of projects increases, and the monitoring concept is also rooted in national funding agencies taking a role there. So the work is distributed evenly among the countries that are a lead partner in the various projects. Yet the numbers are increasing, and this is something that we are rethinking as well.
Maybe to add a little bit to what Hedi said, and maybe looking at a different angle to Beatrice's question, that monitoring concept we've applied now in other ERANETs as well, and it functions well. So the concept is easily transferable and is applicable to any sort of call and any sort of funded project. An important hallmark of the monitoring is what Hedi said, is that the national funding agencies are involved, which also is a very good communication pathway between the projects and the funding agents, especially when it comes to talking about the outputs and eventually outcomes. Does that help, Beatrice?
Sorry for the short break. I was just trying to solve the noise problem. Yeah, thank you, Gunther, for answering this. Maybe we have to go back. Yes, Beatrice is writing that she was satisfied with this answer. Thanks. Let's go back into the presentation because we have to look that we can get back on track with the timing somehow. From the original planning, we have half an hour left now. I think that is not too bad. I mean, we have, I think, to conclude on the project monitoring session, and then we have another session left, and you wanted to tell us about the recommendations. Maybe we can squeeze it a little bit, and we will try to be as efficient as possible, because I think we should not overshoot the maximum length of the event too much. I mean, it's not a problem if we are a little bit longer according to these technical problems that we had, but maybe we should not be too long, as we might lose audience at the end. So who is going to? Christian, please. A technical thing. We can't hear you, Christian.
Just to give you short information, we have about 37 participants again. I see Ranghild, but I don't see any picture of her. So I don't know if, Ranghild, can you hear us and can we hear you?
I can hear you, but I can't see you, and I haven't been able to see you since we started.
It looks like
that's not the problem. The main thing is that you see my presentation.
It looks like your video is off, so perhaps your video camera is not activated. Perhaps you can check this. So Michael, perhaps you take over the chair, and we as soon as I find out that I see Ranghild again, I will put her again in the stage. Okay?
But do you see the presentation?
Ranghild,
yeah, we have the presentation.
We have the backup presentation started, so that's no problem. The only thing is, if you cannot see us, you cannot see which slide we have on, but we can guide you through. I mean, you can have your presentation opened on your computer, and you can ask us to put on the right slide. Maybe, Gunther, you can help, because you are seeing the slide, to navigate us to the right slide where we should start from now.
Yeah. So
let's please one question from us is, if you want the next slide, please tell us next slide.
Okay, so please go to slide number 19, which is now the next part of the presentation. And according to our little internal script, I think I was going to run with that anyway. So we'll talk about the 3 C's: coordination, communication, and collaboration. You know, it's so intuitive for us that we actually didn't put it on the slide. But what is absolutely essential for any functioning for the functioning of our ERANET is actually a SharePoint that is open and accessible to the funding agencies involved, where all of the documents are deposited. And I think that's probably common to most other ERANETs, so no need to belabor it, but highlight the importance of having an easily accessible and easily usable, shared platform like the SharePoint is actually quite important. So we've obviously established our own web page where all of the information to the outer world is listed. You know, calls, events, projects, news. We've got a matchmaking site that actually turns out to be quite valuable and quite important. What is also very, very powerful is we have an excellent dialogue and communication channel to our officer at the European Commission. This is really, really useful because there are so many things when it comes to, say, the exploitation of the results and disseminating that we can align this really well with the European Commission so that this comes across as a European effort. And I must say this is really quite exceptional, and the level of collaboration and the exchange between our EC policy officer and a project officer and an ACT is really quite spectacular. Similarly, of course, is the linkage to the working group or the implementation working group on CCUS of the set plan. That is also turns out to be very essential, especially, as I mentioned earlier, the ERANET Act is very much an instrument of the implementation of the set plan working group on CCUS. Another very important thing that we've done is we encourage projects, funded projects, to collaborate with one another. And that's quite important because some of the projects have similar thrusts, similar objectives, similar goals, but they're separate. Yet they will share quite a bit by talking to one another. And one of the important outcomes here is that this leads to actually new projects, often with consortia being formed from previous or prior projects. So that's actually quite important, and they support one another very, very strongly. Also, this sharing will then also expose funding agencies that might not be directly involved in a project to what these projects are on, and they again serve to connect up national players in this domain, which is not funded by the country, but where there is interest across. So one thing that we do, and we put a lot of emphasis on, is we ask our projects and we strongly encourage them to focus on communication and dissemination beyond the scientific community. So, yeah, there was one project that looked at hydrogen production coupled with CCUS elegancy that made quite an impact in various national capitals and also in Brussels with the European Commission, because they were quite good and very good at developing a strategy to reach out to those stakeholders where the policy relevance of the results of a project would be quite important. And you can well imagine how important green hydrogen production is, or even hydrogen production that might be associated with negative emissions. So really, really valuable, really high impact stuff that came out of it. So on the next slide, there's a bit of an overview of how we are set up in ACT. So we have the ultimate decision-making body. These are senior representatives from the funding agencies. They constitute the policy board. The policy board mandates the coordinator to execute on an annual basis the agreed upon ACT program. And it may be that in 1 year there's a focus on a call, and on the other year it's more going to be on exploitation of the results of ongoing projects. You can see that the coordinator is supported by a management team, which is mostly the work package leaders. But by now, this has really spread out to be a very, very broad constituency where the roles and responsibilities are, number one, effectively managed. But since I mentioned earlier, the spirit of trust and reliance on one another is very well developed in ACT, there are other people who can jump in and actually take on the leadership if, say, one representative of a country that used to be the work package leader is incapacitated or has moved on or something like this. This has been really, really useful, especially for new partners coming in, so that the new partners that came in the second and third call develop a very, very strong sense of ownership of ACT. So that's really quite a positive thing. Now, sorry, the slides are really small on my screen. I need to make it just a bit bigger so that I can see what I'm talking to. Okay, so you can see that our structure in terms of work package, this is fairly routine, and I expect that in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, we'll probably have a similar structure where there's some overarching work packages, and then of course various work packages that will deal with development of call texts and development of, say, communication activities, development of additional activities, and so on. Important as we moved on in the history of ACT, of course, are the second and third joint calls. So this was actually quite an important work package that developed. So you can see that very often the work package leads or the management team of ACT is in close coordination or in close contact with the granted project. So that is again something that turns out to be quite efficient and quite good, this tight interaction between management team and the granted projects. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about, sorry, stay on that slide. Go back, Christian, please. One thing that is quite important, and it's off to the left top, is our Scientific Advisory Committee. They come in very usefully when it comes to updates on the call text, and very importantly, they come in when we do our midterm reviews of the large projects. So they would be part of that group of people that evaluates how well our projects are doing. And the interaction with the European Commission, our policy officer, is mostly through at the level of the coordination that is with the Research Council of Norway. Right. So now we can move to the next slide. This talks a little bit about the governance, the strong governance that we think we have in place, because that is really quite essential, because that is at the end of the day the basis of the trust that we have developed in the ACT management team and also in our coordinator. Now, this strongly collaborative structure actually builds on these long-lasting work packages, and as they develop and evolve over the years. So I think again that's something where work packages, where they set up to be set up in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, should be taken with a view towards that long term, that they last until 2029, 2030, depending on how long we're going to run this thing. So we have some core processes, and they are really incredibly strong, resilient, and they continue and they are maintained throughout. And they obviously work then in very tight cooperation with our coordinator. One thing that our coordinator does really well, I think, is trying to address the needs that each of the ACT partners have. And you can imagine that if a new partner comes in, like in the last call, we had India coming in, and it was really interesting to see and to realize the differences and the similarities that we have in our funding schemes and how we can best align that. And this is, again, where the coordinator would take a very important role. Now, you can see that the role of the coordinator is very important, and obviously it needs to be adequately resourced. So that's, again, something where the coordinator was willing to step up to the plate and really, I think, did more than what was really asked for. So it's really quite impressive. One thing that is very important is we have bi-weekly telephone conferences and webinars, and it's really bi-weekly, and the fact that most of the countries participating join these bi-weekly meetings, sometimes they're even weekly during critical phases, calls and so on, that turns out to be quite good. Now, we do a rotating chair and scribe thing. So each partner needs to run a bi-weekly meeting, and that person will chair and sometimes also will be the scribe to have a comprehensive but very firmly established set of minutes. So it's almost like a fixed template that we have for our meetings, and they get updated and adjusted on a weekly basis. Now, this is quite important because it keeps all of us engaged, and also it keeps all of us extremely well informed. So that's, again, something that I cannot put enough emphasis on, the fact that we have regular high-frequency meetings, and the amount of time and effort and resources at the end of the day that we save by having these regular meetings is really quite important. So again, documentation, and again, we learn how to work with one another. I mean, you can imagine from India to Canada with Europe in between, got very different cultures and very different ways of working. And then finally,
I have to look a little bit on the timing.
Yeah.
I leave you for the you have time for the last point, but I want just to jump in with a certain question, because you mentioned these bi-weekly meetings. Did you manage? I mean, is it only the core team more or less that is meeting here, or is it really all the partners?
It's all the partners.
Mm-hmm.
Usually our agenda is broken up according to the work package, and each work package leader kicks off that agenda item, and then there is a discussion, and all of the partners participate. Okay, so there's some flexibility, but all of them really attend. It's really very important.
Mm-hmm.
So on the final bit on the collaboration is something that we are quite proud of. Is so if you move to the next slide, Christian. Okay, that's the collaboration beyond Europe. Now, that's something that we had to recognize. In the early 2010s to 2015, Europe was falling behind in CCU and CCS. So with ACT, we've actually re-embarked on a path and research and innovation on CCU, CCS, but importantly, other parts of the world, especially North America, was growing very, very rapidly. So what we identified is that there are partners outside Europe who have outstanding research and innovation communities, strong pilot and demo programs, in some cases also commercialization programs that really enable the rollout of CCUS in the industry. And that's obviously something that we can benefit, because Europe has some unique strengths in CCUS, CCS, and it's all about connecting that at a global scale. At the end of the day, it obviously is a global problem that we're trying to address. So many of the ACT management team, as we mentioned again and again, are also in many other multilateral organizations, the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum, the Mission Innovation Challenge on CCUS, the IEA. So there is a very strong network, and actually a very strong outward out of Europe, look that we have. So that's something that we try to cultivate and really push forward, because As I mentioned also earlier, there is no market yet. Yet we need to roll out that industry we need to roll out that technology quite a bit. The way we do it, because we are so internationally well connected, we just go and continuously drum the beat on ACT and how valuable it is. And obviously there is success, growth and partnership. So we think this is actually really good because we also learn a lot about the way other countries, other continents are doing that. We had one knowledge sharing workshop, for example, where we had invited on the margin of a big international conference, Australia to come in and tell us how they fund major CCUS projects. So that was actually quite an interesting one. Obviously, there's a challenge. Getting Alberta to India involved in meetings in one day is a bit of a challenge. That's
that. I think that's true. Yes. Gunther, just 1 second. Christian is waving his hand.
Sorry. First of all, Gunther, I really admire all your power in your presentation and in the words. Second thing, you should know that as far as I see it now, Ragnhild is audio with us and Gertie is audio with us. So both can be asked and should be able to say something. So please, Gertie, could you please just say that we can find out if we hear you?
Gertie, are you there?
Okay. Don't look like it. I see her on the screen, but there's no audio, no video. Perhaps she has to unmute herself. Ragnhild, you can hear us. Can we hear you?
I can hear you clear.
Okay. So Ragnhild is with you, and as soon as Gertie has unmuted herself, we should also hear her. So I'm out again. It's your stage again.
Thanks, Christian. There was one very, very important point, and maybe I'll let Ragnhild talk to that. It's the issue of consortium agreements in funded projects that need to accommodate North America and India. Ragnhild, maybe you can have a few sentences on that, please.
Yes, thank you so much. When we expanded our consortium outside Europe, we were challenged with the consortium agreements for the project partners. In Europe, most of the academics, any types of topics are used to the DESCA model, but that is not the case in US. And the mainly trouble here is placing the location for any dispute. And some lawyers on the US side in this case, they were not happy to see that dispute should be placed in Brussels or other places in Europe. But our experience so far is that one can manage this by having one consortium agreement for the Europeans and that the project lead signs a different agreement with partners outside Europe. That it seems to be a doable way ahead. And we are trying to figure out other options in that sense also.
Yeah, see the point. But it means that the consortium leader has to take responsibility for the disputes that might also arise from other partners, and he has then to go into this with the partner of the US, right?
Yeah. But our approach again is that if there should build up to a dispute or some conflicts, we will have picked that up in the quarterly reports or in annual meetings.
Yeah, normally you can solve
at the
that
end, to be very realistic, it will never come to an end where they will meet in court.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the way we work in this kind of networks. It's always on trust, built on trust and consensus more or less, more than fighting for.
But that is the challenge one is facing when you bring lawyers. Nothing bad said about lawyers, but of course they look very specifically into the various clauses and should do so. But one needs to be pragmatic and flexible in order to succeed here.
Very interesting point.
I mean, one important lesson, going forward to the CETP is, the message that I would like you to take home with is on cooperation with other outside Europe partners. There are Aeronets, ACT, Geothermica being the two that I know of that have found or about to find ways on how to set up these intercontinental projects. And I think by the time we do our call in CETP 2022 with projects probably developing CAs by 2022 second half, I think we'll have some working solutions there. So it's important that we preserve that knowledge and carry that over.
I agree very much, yes. As we are quite advanced in time, but still very good given that given the case that the fact that we have really had a full blackout in between and we've managed to reconnect. I would like to ask you on the one hand side if you want to add anything to this session from your side, or if we should move to the next session. I don't see any questions from the chat at the moment. One question that was left was, I think, from Susanne about the knowledge sharing platform. My feeling was that this has been answered by the presentation, but I'm not sure.
What was the question?
So the question is,
yeah,
in the beginning, we have introduced the knowledge sharing platform. Can you explain what it is exactly?
What we have mentioned is the knowledge sharing meetings, or perhaps I called it the knowledge sharing platform, but that covers the annual knowledge sharing workshops and other knowledge sharing meetings, which we have paid a lot of attention to in order to bring the various projects together and also with other stakeholders. And the idea here is that they should, of course, provide plan or thoughts and present their status of the project, but they also should take advantage of learning from others and look for synergies in particular areas. That could, for instance, be how to do the communication and outreach in a good and appropriate manner. Because these things are targeted and executed in very different manners in various countries. So learning from each other on this case is very, very important. And also to schedule meetings and invite the Commission to these meetings. So several projects are presented at the same time.
Yeah.
On a
so
particular.
It means it's mainly organized by meetings and projects presenting themselves, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And, you know, this development of the Eranet Act brand is something that we encourage. For example, there are some regular international, you know, very big conferences on CCUS, CCS every other year. And this is where we ask all our projects that present, and obviously there'll be 20, 30 presentations based on Eranet Act projects to come up and, you know, basically promote the brand. Okay, since we have only a few more minutes left, I would like to suggest to Christian that he goes to slide number 25. And Ragnhild, can I give you the floor for the recommendations?
Yes, thank you so much. I have 25 up on my screen also. Yes, actually, we thought when we have the possibility to present some experience from ACT, we could perhaps also try to come up with some recommendations for the future partnership, either the full partnership or the various challenges. But our main input, of course, will be keep the organization and the governance as lean as possible. To be effective, it's absolutely necessary not to have too many layers and how too many people involved in specific areas for decision, but you need them for some points, but don't overdo it. Keep it very, very simple. That is probably the most important experience we have from ACT and the way we have organized it. And be open and inform all. And we will also like to say that it's important to achieve focus or have focus on achieving good results, and you spend the money on high quality projects and not dig into too many details for improving or being very, very formal in a sense, if we could put it this way. Sometimes one lose something and you gain something on the other hand, being a bit flexible and having the right focus on the quality outputs. And we've seen that involving the partners, not only those having an active role as work package lead, is very important. And in particular, when you join with new partners, perhaps from another part of the globe, with different culture, different routines, and so on, it's very important to involve them. Sometimes more than you think at the first time. You have time to do so, but it really pays off. And again, also the flexibility that we have established in ACT, it's very important, mainly in order not to lose smaller countries, those not up on top scale for the CUS interest. It's very important to be flexible and accept their regimes or limitations, be it on funding or restrictions for topics being funded and so on. Just allow it, because this flexibility is also important to keep them in the loop and keep them interested. And we've seen that having a small consortium to start with, building trust and actually being friends with each other is very important to keeping up with the engagement. And that builds on when you have new partners coming into it. So the spirit and the engagement is very important to pay attention to, and that you cannot draw. You cannot put it into boxes. That's about the personalities for those taking part in this type of collaboration. But there are ways to do this so that people feel confident and are being involved in what is being developed, and feel also responsible for what we decide to move on with and what we decide not to continue with. One point at the end here is perhaps we need at a certain stage to look more into how we share the co-fund. There are various ways to do that, and also we need to have a look into what about the coordination management costs. Huge partnerships, of course, will draw a lot of cost for running that from a day-to-day operation, but it's important also to have people involved or partners involved who also are willing to do quite much on an in-kind basis. Not saying that the CETP or lead for the various challenges under CETP should be done only by in-kind contribution from the partners. No, that is not the way to do it. But it's important that there will be some in-kind input to this management. We have found a way, a rather okay way, I would say, from the ACT program. Some of those in the audience now will know about the unit cost. It's not a huge sum of money, but each partner taking part in additional activities receives a small sum from the Commission, which is paid up front. We decided to have a fair share, like 50% of that in total, contributing the coordination and management activities at the Research Council of Norway. And it goes mainly, I would say even 100% of that share goes for running the submission system, and the majority also for the evaluation process, because we pay the experts a fee for running the assessments and taking part in the evaluation panel. So we have some good experiences there also that we are willing to share with you. But the main thing is keep it efficient and flexible. So that was my last slide.
Yeah,
Number
great
26
point,
is
Ragnhild.
really thank you
Particularly
for
the
your
last one, I
attention.
think, yeah, that you mentioned that, I mean, of course, we have to have a sound structure and also a sound basis for how to secure resources in the different organizations that are participating. And that means also, of course, financial resources. But as you say, in this kind of networks, we always need the full commitment from the partners, from the organizations, and that they are also ready to step in with their own resources for a certain part. I think that's a very good point you are making, and it absolutely converges with the learnings that we had. Anything you want to add to this, Gunther? And I don't know if we have Gerdi. I think we have lost her now. Finally, Christian, is that correct? I'm very sorry about this. We have, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Maybe just one thing that is really always worth remembering. When we set this out, the first call, imagine the European Commission contributed, say, 12 million, and the first budget was 36. And what it triggered in terms of follow-up calls and next calls. And imagine that we're going to do the same thing in the CETP. This, I think, is quite exciting. And it's really a brilliant idea to kickstart things with a co-fund. But then I think we all should expect that it's going to grow on its own. And there's going to be a dynamic. And that's really, I think, at the end of the day, really what is incredibly valuable about this partnership. It's the start of something big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to work on somehow critical masses also and awareness. I mean, what my feeling was also that even if the Aeronets did a good job, still in the, let's say, in the awareness in our organizations, yeah, maybe sometimes they were not so high up because other established networks like the IEA or so are considered as to be important. But I think what we add with our partnerships and the Aeronets to this is not to collect the expertise only, but I mean to take the next steps, to analyze, to know what has to be done, and to fund it. And that's the core point, I think, to put resources into the next steps of development of the different technologies. And I think also hope that the CETP can help to raise the awareness that of the networks that we are building here and the tremendous job that they are doing actually already for some years. According to our timing, we have reached the point of the planned end of our event. I think you did really a great job to kick that off and with your presentations. And yeah, all of a sudden, even if we had these technical issues in between, you made a landing to the point. If you are satisfied with that, I would say we could step by step come to an end. Or is there anything that you want to add at this point? And at the same time, I'm calling up to the audience out there. You also seem to be a little bit exhausted already after 2 hours because the comments are getting fewer. But if you have any additional questions that you want us to answer, then please post them now so we can immediately take them up at the end of this first event. What I want to say is that we also are working on introducing a concept that we would call the audience microphone. We did only not try this the first time, not to try out too many elements at the first event that we then might not be able to handle. But in the future, it will be possible that if anyone wants to be connected to the studio, also talking to us and not only writing in the chat, this will be possible in the next events. Please stay tuned, and yeah, hopefully some of you will use this tool in the future. I would be happy if Christian, for the final goodbye, could bring us all up to the screen. I want to thank also the background team, Arno, who had technical problems, but is the one that will handle the regie in the coming meetings together with Christian. Thank you, Christian, for this. How should I say? It was brave to do this first event in that style. Thank you very much. You brought us back even in times of big problems. Arno is here again, so at least we can see you. I hope we can also hear you. Nicholas, thanks for helping with all the preparations and the chat. So these are the guys that are responsible for that this kind of events are working out and everything is well prepared. Thank you for the speakers, for the presenters, Gunther, Gerdi, unfortunately we lost her, and Ranghild, for giving us this, I think, very, very interesting insight in how your network is working. I think you have achieved a lot with this initiative, and a lot of things we have learned today that we can build on when we build the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. That's really great. Thanks a lot for taking the time to prepare this for us, to present it to us, and to answer all our questions. Having said this, and if no other remarks, I would be ready to close this first event. Thanks a lot. We will come up with the next events the next weeks. Friday, every Friday, same time, the same YouTube channel. You find the particular links to the particular events on our Xpera platform, but with the channel link that you have in the invitation and in the Outlook date, you always can connect to the channel, which also helps you to bring you back on the live stream in case that we face problems like today. So please use that one. Thank you, Christian, for providing this channel for us of the Intelligent World conferences, that we can use it to collect. And everyone that wants to restream or look on one of the events at another time, they will all be there stored in the YouTube channel, and everyone can access them also later on. Of course, we will put the links, collect them on the Xpera platform there so that it's easier to access them. Yeah, that was, I think, some technical stuff that I wanted to mention at the end, but now I definitely stop and leave you all for the Friday afternoon and the weekend. Have a good time and see you next week. Bye-bye.
May I ask the participants, please stay in the room as the participants, and all the other ones, bye-bye, also from my side. So let's wave all together, whoever can, to our viewers. Thanks, and see you.